A lot of people talk about veganism and animal rights as if veganism is a natural extension of, a natural consequence following from animal rights. What would you think if I told you that I'm a vegan and I do not believe in animal rights? There are many vegans at the moment in 2017 who argue that veganism is a natural extension of human rights, that actually it's just an extension of the human rights discourse. It's especially popular, I'd say within that category, for people to try to argue that veganism is a natural consequence, a natural extension of the same tendency seen in the anti-racism discourse and in the feminist discourse. That somehow there's this sequence of parallel oppressions that people have been fighting to lift, and the next one to go is going to be the barrier between human and animal, in the same way that they imagine there was previously a barrier between man and woman, or within the United States, a barrier between black and white, i.e. the status of black people under slavery thereafter. I don't believe in any of that. Implicitly or explicitly, veganism is a movement in which many people participate with many different competing definitions. It may seem laughable to some of you, if you're an outsider, if you haven't been involved in veganism, it may seem laughable that people could be members of a movement and still debating the meaning of the word. But it's actually a really meaningful debate. I think that veganism is still a contestable concept. I think that pretty much the whole library of animal rights concepts are still really contestable in an open-ended way. I think nobody can claim to know the truth of animal rights. Animal rights may not present us with any truths. As a paradigm, I think it may only present us with questions. I'm going to hit you with some real-life examples in case this is too abstract for you. For many vegans, it's an uncomfortable exception to the rules when somebody confronts them with the fact that the production of wheat, the production of grain, involves killing animals. It involves killing insects, yes, but also involves killing animals like gophers. Gophers, complex mammals with eyes and a brain and a beating heart and red blood. That's the reality of where your bread comes from if you're vegan. It's the reality, to make a long story short, of where pretty much all your fruit and vegetables come from also. It's a slightly different story in each case, but yeah, pretty much all of them involve killing animals. So is veganism, or is it not, opposed to the killing of animals? Many, many vegans who define the idea and define the movement in those terms then have to deal with this as an uncomfortable exception to the rules. And they engage in Jesuitical reasoning of one kind or another. I think it's important not to be consistent in your propaganda message. That doesn't really matter to me too much. You may have different types of messages for different types of audiences. I think it's really important to be consistent when you're alone looking at yourself in the mirror. I think it's important to be consistent when you're in intimate conversations with your loved ones, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your parents, your grandparents, your children, about what veganism is and what it means to you. I think it's important to be consistent in your own heart and your own mind with yourself. I think it's important that you're not living a lie, not even if it's a lie you're living for a good cause. And I do believe that veganism is a good cause, even when people pursue it for the wrong reasons, or even when people pursue it for internally contradictory reasons. Yeah. Every time you buy an airplane ticket, you are paying for someone to go around in a golf course. Little slip there. You're paying for someone to go around in a golf cart with a shotgun, shooting birds to make sure there aren't birds flying into the aircraft engine. It's a little bit different in different climates and at different airports, but yeah, killing birds is part of keeping an airport running, by and large. Depends if the airport is close to a forest or not. Depends on the climate to some extent. But yeah, sometimes it's more of a problem, sometimes less. But pretty much each and every airport you'll go to has some measures in place, largely violent, to keep birds away from the runway, to keep them out of aircraft engines, so that the people in the airplanes are safe. As a vegan, you're probably familiar with the mode of reasoning of saying, hey, look, if you're morally comfortable with eating pork, then you have to be morally comfortable with slitting the throat of the pig yourself, right? It can't just be that it's moral for someone else to kill the pig and for you to eat the pig. Either you're taking responsibility for the consequences of your actions or you're not. Well, are you taking responsibility for the consequences of your actions when, as a vegan, you eat bread and you know you're killing gophers, or when you buy an airplane ticket and you know you're killing birds? I am consistent because, as I said, my paradigm, my model of veganism is not based on animal rights. It's not based on the belief that each animal has a soul. It's not based on the belief that we should extend to all animals the model of so-called love and care and affection that people often feel towards household pets like dogs and cats. I don't share the view that we should extend that feeling to bears and cows and cockroaches. In fact, if you watch my videos about domestication of animals, I don't even think it's an impulse that's healthy or that we should celebrate in terms of the relationship between human animals and wolves, or between humans and cats, or what have you. I think that's a deeply, deeply flawed paradigm to base any moral argument on. That it's moral to love your dog in a certain way, therefore this is how we should treat these other animals. I believe that animals in the wild should lead dignified lives that have as little to do with human beings as possible. Although the reality in the 21st century is that we have a moral responsibility to protect wilderness, to protect habitat against the encroachment of our fellow human beings, and to act in the best interests of the species themselves, of biodiversity, or of the continuation of particular species, even though with wildlife management that may actually entail killing particular animals. What is my definition of veganism? I'll tell you. My definition of veganism is this. If I, as just one person, can refuse to buy animal products of any kind, in my small, small way, I'm making the world a better place. It's better ecologically, it's better ethically, and it's better for my own health. If you would join me, if you and you and you would join me, a few dozen, a few hundred, a few thousand, it would make the world a better place. Ecologically, ethically, and for your health, for all of our health, right? And then beyond that, the next step is if we can get organized politically so that at least other people are inspired to become veganism, or maybe just to create the conditions in the world to make it easier for people to become and remain veganism. Running vegan grocery stores, vegan daycares, vegan old folks homes, vegan restaurants, lobbying government for legal changes, all the things that are going to enable the veganization of our community, our cluster of friends, whatever it may be, of our generation, right? Then that's the logical next step that grows out of that definition, that approach. But that approach ultimately is addressed to the tremendous evil of factory farming, of cows in their millions and billions living their whole lives in a steel cage beneath a steel sky on a concrete floor, being born and living a life of nothing but suffering, never seeing the clouds in the sky, just to produce food that is unnecessary and unhealthy, right? This is the central challenge that veganism addresses, but it's not the only challenge, right? My definition of veganism really leaves an open door to the reality of where your bread comes from, of how airports operate in terms of birds flying around, in terms of wildlife management, culling animals, killing animals outright, for the purpose of trying to maintain habitat for the greater good of that ecosystem, of making the decision that maybe a species of predator is overpopulating and is driving another species to extinction, that maybe a plague has broken out. All the hard decisions that park rangers have to make in managing habitat. My philosophy encompasses and includes all that positively, not as an exception to the rule. For me, that's the rule. My version of veganism includes killing animals, and it is actually not based on a concept of animal rights. It's based on what I called the wildlife management paradigm.